Chapter 5. The Girl in the Garden. It rained the next morning. Soft, steady, like the sky was whispering to the earth. The house looked peaceful in that dull gray light. You'd never know it had nearly swallowed me whole the night before. But something had changed. I felt it the moment I stepped outside. The air was too still. The wind was absent, even though the trees swayed ever so slightly, like they were breathing. The backyard hadn't seen care in years. Bushes had grown wild, the garden beds swallowed by ivy. A rusted swing set leaned sideways near the back fence, one chain broken. I walked out barefoot, just needing air, distance, something that wasn't covered in mirrors or shadows. And that's when I saw her. At first I thought she was a trick of the light. A flash of white in the rose bushes. A bird, maybe. A torn plastic bag. But no, it was a girl. A small one. She stood barefoot in the center of the overgrown garden, wearing a white dress soaked from the rain. Her hair hung in dark, wet strings around her face. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Just stared at me. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. I took a step toward her. She tilted her head. Not in that horrible, unnatural way the reflection had done, but gently. Curiously. Like a child. She raised one hand, slowly, and pointed down, at the ground beneath her feet. I looked. It was just dirt, tangled roots, pieces of broken stone. When I looked back up, she was gone. No footsteps. No splash. Just vanished. But where she had stood, something had changed. The earth looked disturbed. I dropped to my knees and began to dig with my hands. The soil was wet and cold and clung to my skin like something alive. Inch by inch, I pulled it away until my fingers struck something solid. Wood. A small box. Weathered, warped by time, the hinges nearly rusted shut. I opened it slowly, expecting what? Bones? Teeth? Another mirror? But what I found was worse. Inside were the belongings of a child. A tiny shoe. A cracked music box shaped like a swan. A lock of hair tied with red ribbon. And a photograph. Faded. Torn at the edges. But clearly visible. Aunt Olena. And beside her, the girl. The same one I had just seen in the garden. They were standing together near the swing set. Olena looked young, maybe 16. She had her arm protectively around the child. On the back of the photo, written in ink nearly washed away by time, Marika, 1979. Never let her near the mirror. My hands began to shake. I brought the box inside, drying my fingers on a towel, trying to keep my thoughts from spiraling. The name echoed in my head, Marika. Not a spirit. Not an echo. A person. Was she a sister? A cousin? Why had Olena never told me? I searched the house again. This time more aggressively. Pulled books off shelves. Dumped drawers. Checked under floorboards. And in the living room, behind a row of encyclopedias, I found a leather-bound journal. Olena's. Most of it was gibberish at first glance. Scribbles, half-finished sentences, notes in Latin or Ukrainian dialects I couldn't translate. But one entry had a date. The 3rd of August, 1980. I failed her. I thought I could protect her. I thought the thing only wanted me. But she called it. She stood in front of the mirror and said yes, just a child. How could it know? I buried what was left in the garden. Not her body, God, no. But the pieces she left behind. The box. The swan. The lock of hair. Maybe the soil will hold her. Maybe the mirror will forget. I stared at the page until the words blurred. The girl I saw wasn't a ghost. She was what was left of someone the mirror had taken. And now the thing in the mirror had me. That night I had a dream. I was in the garden again. But the sky was black. The trees were dead. And the swing set creaked slowly in the windless air. Marika stood under it. She turned to me. And this time she spoke. She is behind you. I turned. But I woke up before I saw her face. Chapter 6. My shadow has a life of its own. I don't know how long I stared into the mirror before I noticed it. It started small. Barely noticeable. When I brushed my hair, my reflection's arm would lag just by a second, like a glitch in video playback. A delay subtle enough to doubt myself, to blame exhaustion. But then it started happening during the day. Out of the corner of my eye, I'd see my reflection move when I was perfectly still. Once I dropped a spoon and my reflection didn't. She stood motionless, her eyes locked on mine, mouth curled into a faint smile. It wasn't me anymore. And it didn't stop at the mirror. It was late afternoon. The rain hadn't let up since I found Marika's box. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to read, pretend, anything to ground myself. The room was dim but not dark. Then I saw it. My shadow. It moved. I hadn't shifted. I was completely still. But the shadow on the floor beside me raised a hand. Slowly. Deliberately. It waved. I froze. I turned my head slowly, heart beating in my throat. My real hand hadn't moved, but the shadow had. It stopped waving. Then it began to walk away. Not across the wall or floor out of sync with me, like a living silhouette. It peeled off the floor, like wet paper lifting from glass, and drifted toward the bedroom door. Then gone. No sound. Just absence. That night, the house felt hollow, like something was walking inside the walls. I moved from room to room, trying to stay ahead of the cold patches, the flickering corners. The hallway mirror was now cracked top to bottom, warped, like it had melted in place. Every time I passed it, I saw not one reflection but two. Me. And the other me. Sometimes she followed. Sometimes she stood still while I kept walking. But then came the dream or the memory. I can't tell the difference anymore. I was standing in the attic, but everything was backwards. The windows were on the wrong side. The walls stretched too tall and the corners pulsed with shadow. In the center of the floor was a mirror, tall, silver, clean, untouched. I walked toward it. And inside it stood my shadow. Not a reflection. Not a person. Just a shadow shaped me moving like smoke. She tilted her head, raised a hand, and then stepped through the mirror. Into my world. I woke up gasping. I rushed to the mirror. I wasn't alone. There were footprints on the inside of the glass. Tiny smudges where bare feet had pressed from the other side. I started noticing other things after that. My shadow reappeared in windows. In puddles. Sometimes in other people's reflections. I'd look at a photo on my phone, and in the background there she'd be. Always a few paces behind. Always smiling. Worse still, I felt her inside me. I would lose time. A minute here, 10 minutes there. I'd find bruises on my arms I couldn't explain. Wake up in different clothes. Once I looked at my phone notes and saw a message typed at 3:03 a.m. We are blending beautifully. I didn't write that. I know I didn't. I tried calling someone again. This time the line answered, but no one spoke. Just breathing. Then a voice, my own, whispered, I am already here. I started wearing gloves and long sleeves. Avoided looking into reflective surfaces. Taped black paper over the hallway mirror. Refused to enter the bathroom without covering the sink. But it didn't matter. She no longer needed glass. She was in the walls. In the air. In me. I didn't need a mirror to see her anymore. Sometimes I'd blink and she'd be standing at the edge of the hallway. Other times I'd catch a glimpse of my reflection in a pot lid or a faucet, and her eyes wouldn't blink when mine did. Last night I tried to leave. The door opened. I actually stepped onto the porch. The air was crisp. Fresh. Normal. But then I heard it. Behind me. A whisper. Soft. Pleading. Don't leave me here alone. I turned. She was standing just inside the doorway. No longer a shadow. No longer smoke. A perfect copy. Of me. Tears running down her face. Arms open. Begging. Chapter 7. The gateway between worlds. I don't remember stepping through the doorway. I remember standing on the porch, the cold wind brushing my face, freedom only a few steps away. I remember turning to see her, my double, crying, begging not to be left alone. And then, I was back inside. The door was closed. The lock turned. I hadn't touched it. My feet were muddy, as if I had walked through the garden again, but I had not moved. Not really. Something else had. That was when I realized she could pull me back. The house was darker than before. Not from the absence of light, but from something thicker, like the walls themselves had absorbed the shadows. I felt them pressing in, breathing. When I walked, the floor didn't creak. It sighed. And the mirror, God, the mirror, was no longer just a mirror. It was glowing. Not with light. With depth. With space that shouldn't exist. Like it had peeled open. When I stood before it, I didn't see my reflection anymore. I saw the house again, this house, but wrong. Everything was decayed. The walls wept black mold. The chandelier hung twisted and broken. And where my double had once smiled, now she simply watched, expressionless. A hollow, rotting version of me. I reached out to touch the glass and my fingers passed through. Not cold. Not solid. Wet. Like the surface of a pond. And the moment I made contact, something pulled. I was no longer in my bedroom. I stood in the mirror world. A perfect echo of the house, but stripped bare. The wallpaper curled like skin. The mirrors were all shattered. The furniture was dust. And in the distance, I heard laughter. Children's laughter, twisting into a scream. I followed it. Through warped hallways, into the basement, down a staircase that didn't exist in the real house. At the bottom, a door with no handle, covered in carvings. Symbols that looked like the ones in Olena's letters. Warding marks. Ancient protection. But they were smeared, broken. Someone had opened this already. And inside I saw it. The core. The truth. The heart of it all. It was a room of mirrors. Floor to ceiling. Round. A perfect circle. Every mirror reflected not me, but a different version of me. Some weeping. Some whispering. One covered in blood. Another in fire. All watching me. And in the center of the room stood the girl Mariika. She turned to face me slowly. Her white dress was tattered. Her eyes were entirely black. She opened her mouth to speak, but the voice was not hers. It was mine. Now you know what I am. I am every possibility you abandoned. Every memory you suppressed. Every version of you that chose differently. And I am free. The mirrors began to hum. Vibrate. The air in the room warped like heat rising from pavement. And suddenly I wasn't alone. She stepped forward from one of the mirrors. My double. No longer smiling. Now furious. Eyes like knives. You were supposed to stay. You always stayed. Why are you fighting now? I backed away, but the mirrors closed in. And behind each one a hand pressed against the glass. Then another. Then hundreds. Fingers. Faces. All me. All trapped. Mariika whispered, soft as wind. Break the circle. That's how she entered. That is how you send her back. But I didn't know what she meant. I fell to my knees, dizzy, ears ringing. The world pulsed. Glass cracked. And my double lunged, straight through the nearest mirror. I screamed and woke up, on the floor, in the real house, alone, breathing hard, covered in bruises that hadn't been there before. But something was in my hand, a shard of mirror glass, and carved into the wall behind me. One world must be sealed. Chapter 8, the circle must close. I woke up on the floor. The wooden boards were cold despite the morning light. The sunlight through the window was dim, as if something dense and thick, not cloud, but darkness, was pressing in from the inside. In my hand was a shard of mirror. Blood on my palm. Not mine. I looked at the wall. There, as if burned into the wood, were the words, "One world must be sealed." My heart beat in my throat. I couldn't breathe. I remembered the dream, not a dream the other side. The mirror room. Mariika. All the versions of me trapped in the glass. They weren't dreams. I felt them. Their fear. their fury, and her. The other me was no longer just a reflection. No longer just a trick of light. She wanted to stay. In my body. In my world. And I could feel her writing herself into me, pulsing like a second heart. The circle must be closed. I knew where to go. The attic. That's where it began. The attic smelled like mildew and dust, but underneath that, something else. The scent of metal. Blood. Fear. I moved old boxes aside and found something I hadn't seen before, a small wooden hatch in the floor. Square with a rusted iron ring in the center. I couldn't remember if it had always been there, or if it appeared after. I went down. Beneath the hatch was a narrow passage carved into the house's foundation. The walls were earthen. Roots jutted out like skeletal fingers. At the end was the circle. Old, laid in salt, ash, and dried herbs nearly worn away by time. Symbols carved into stones. One of them was broken, cracked, maybe stepped on or smashed. The circle had been broken. That's what Marika said. A broken circle is a doorway. Seal it and she will leave. But how? I looked around. In the corner, an old box. Inside it, charred candles, a knife with a bone handle, and something I never expected. A photograph. Me. Very young. Maybe 6 years old? On Elena's lap. And behind us, a mirror. That mirror. But in the reflection, not us. In the reflection, the same room, but with marionettes in our place. Hanging. Eyes glassy like dolls. Faces twisted. I clamped a hand over my mouth to stop the scream. This isn't just a mirror. It's a gate. A key. She comes through us. I placed the candles in a circle. I remembered what I had read in Olena's notes. Protection requires sacrifice. Salt. Blood. A name. I carved my name into the back of the mirror shard still in my hand. Then a thin slice on my palm. A drop of blood landed inside the circle. And then darkness spoke. Not a voice, but a vibration inside my skull. A whisper in bone. You want to undo what was never meant to be? You think you are the one on this side? You are my shadow, not the other way around. Inside the circle, the air went cold. Figures stepped from the dirt walls, versions of me. Burned. Hanged. Eyes and mouths stitched shut, but hands clawing at the air. They came closer. All of them. And then I understood. I can't force the circle closed. She has to step in willingly. I looked into the shard, raised it to my face, and said, You want to stay? Then take me completely. Step through. Enter the circle. The shadow in the mirror froze. Considered. Then stepped forward. One step. Then another. Into the circle. I raised my hand, pressing the shard to the ground, and whispered the final words from Olena's journal. Close the path. Let only one reflection remain. Light burst from the candles, shooting upward like flame. The circle flared. The ground shook. The darkness screamed. I screamed. And then nothing. I woke up in my bed. Day. Warm. Sunny. The mirror in the hallway silent. Just glass? No cracks. No hesitation. I walked up. Looked into it. Only me. No smile. No delay. My reflected eyes, tired but mine. On the glass, no handprints. No shadow. Just one word, like breath across cold. Goodbye. Chapter 9. The house knows your name. The mirror was silent. For the first time in weeks, I walked through the house without looking over my shoulder. No shadows moved where they shouldn't. No whispers. No flickering lights. Just quiet. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like waiting. That night I dreamed of the house. But not how it is now, how it was long before I ever came here. The walls were younger. The furniture wasn't covered in sheets. There were voices, laughter, and then silence. I stood in the center of the living room, watching as the wallpaper peeled by itself. The ceiling sagged. Mirrors cracked. The house was remembering. And then I heard it. A knock. Soft, slow, coming from inside the walls. I woke to find something strange. All the doors in the house open. Front door. Back door. Pantry. Basement. Every one. I closed them all, heart racing. But as I turned to walk away, I saw it. Something carved into the wood of the front door. Welcome back. The letters weren't there yesterday. I ran to the mirror in the hallway. Still nothing. No shadows. No reflection delay. Just me. But when I turned to leave, I caught it. The mirror's angle had changed. It was no longer reflecting this hallway. It was showing a different one. Same shape. Same lights. But on the floor of that hallway, a trail of ash. And something crawling toward the frame. I shattered the mirror with the fireplace poker. Glass everywhere. But behind it, no wall. Just darkness. And at the center, a door. Old. Wooden. Covered in symbols I didn't recognize, but one I did. My name. Burned into the center. I heard Elena's voice again, like a memory stitched into time. The shadow doesn't come from behind you, Alina. It waits for you to turn around. I reached for the doorknob. Cold. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know. But I did. Behind it, the same house, but silent. Gray. Time frozen. And in the middle of the room, a girl. Small. Pale. Sitting cross-legged, holding a marionette that looked exactly like me. She looked up, eyes like ink, and whispered, "You sealed the circle, but not the story. Someone still has to stay behind." I backed away, slammed the door shut. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just whispered, "Let it be me," and walked back into the darkness. They found the house empty. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No broken glass. Only a single note on the table. One reflection must remain. They say the mirror never worked again. Just a black sheet of glass. But sometimes if you stand close enough, you can see someone watching. And if you listen hard enough, you will hear her voice.